25-year-old lonely little girl, offered her only teddy bear to a billionaire. His reaction changed her life forever. Rain fell in sheets across the financial district. Expensive suits dodged puddles. No one noticed the small figure huddled under. The bus shelter. Emma clutched Max tighter to her chest. Her only friend. Her teddy bear with one missing eye and stuffing that peeked through worn seams. She was used to waiting. At 5 years old, waiting had become her specialty. "Just one more hour, sweetheart," her mother had promised. One more hour of cleaning offices while Emma sat quietly with Max. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. This story might just restore your faith in humanity. The bus shelter offered little protection as the wind changed direction. Emma shivered. Then she saw him. A tall man in the fanciest suit she'd ever seen. His car, long and black, waited at the curb with a driver holding an umbrella. But he wasn't moving toward it. He stood in the rain, staring at his phone. His face looked like how Emma felt most days, lonely. She'd seen that look before. In the mirror. When her mother left for her second job, without thinking, Emma stood up, tiny rain boots splashing through puddles. Max clutched in her small hands. The man didn't notice her approach, not until she tugged gently on his expensive coat. He looked down, surprised to find a child soaking wet, golden curls plastered to her forehead. "Are you sad?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible above the rain. Richard Barrett, tech billionaire and CEO of Barrett Industries, found himself speechless for the first time in decades. Board meetings couldn't do that. Shareholders couldn't do that. But a small child with concerned eyes somehow did. He began, unsure how to respond to such directness. Emma didn't wait for him to finish. She thrust Max forward. "This is Max. He makes me feel better when I'm sad." The teddy bear, worn, loved, and falling apart, was offered with small outstretched arms. "You need him more than me right now," she said with absolute certainty. Something inside Richard stirred, something long dormant. He crouched down, expensive suit meeting dirty puddle water. "That's very kind, but he's yours." Emma pushed Max toward him again. "Just for today. He's good at hugs." The driver watched, umbrella still held uselessly above an empty spot. The rain continued to soak them both. Richard Barrett, worth billions, found himself accepting a one-eyed teddy bear from a child whose shoes had holes in them. Not today, perhaps not ever, would he be the same. Emma's building had no elevator. 4 flights of stairs in a neighborhood Richard's driver had questioned entering. "Are you sure, sir?" Richard was not sure. Not about anything anymore. But he held Max the teddy bear and followed Emma and her mother up concrete steps that smelled of dampness and disrepair. Sarah Chen worked 3 jobs: office cleaning, weekend, cashier, evening data entry from home. Her hands were raw from cleaning chemicals. Her eyes carried permanent exhaustion. "You really didn't have to drive us," she said for the 3rd time, keys jangling as she unlocked 3 separate locks. The bus would have been fine, but Richard had insisted, the same way Emma had insisted he take Max. Their apartment was small, clean, sparsely furnished, a folded futon, a small table, a corner carefully arranged with second-hand toys. "Would you like some tea?" Sarah asked, politeness overriding exhaustion. Richard nodded, still clutching the teddy bear. Out of place? A billionaire in a 2-room apartment. Emma showed him her corner, her books, her single doll with mismatched clothes. "Max usually sits here," she explained, patting a small pillow. "But he's helping you today." From the kitchenette, Sarah watched nervously. "Emma, don't bother Mr. Barrett." "She's not bothering me," Richard said quietly. In his penthouse across town, minimalist furniture worth more than this entire building stood unused. Artwork chosen by designers hung on walls he barely noticed. Here, crayon drawings covered a refrigerator. Here, a child had offered her most precious possession to a stranger because he looked sad. What happened to Max's eye? Richard asked, examining the teddy bear. Some boys took him at the park, Emma said simply. They threw him in mud, Mom fixed. Him? But couldn't find his eye. Sarah placed a chipped mug before him. I'm sorry about today. Emma shouldn't have bothered you. She's just empathetic, Richard finished. She saw someone in pain and tried to help. When was the last time anyone had done that for him? Looked. Past his wealth, his position, his power, and simply seen a person? His phone buzzed. 14 messages, 3 missed calls, a world of important people demanding his attention. He silenced it. Tell me about yourself, Emma, he said instead. The little girl's face lit up. No one ever asked her that. Richard's office occupied the top floor of a glass tower. Windows overlooked the city like a command center. People entered his space with reverence, with fear. Yet he sat at his desk, ignoring urgent documents, staring at a one-eyed teddy bear propped against his computer. The Tokyo investors are waiting, sir, his assistant reminded. Richard nodded absently. Give me 5 minutes. 2 days had passed since the rain, since a child had seen through his carefully constructed facade. His life flashed before him in fragments. Accolades, acquisitions, empty relationships. His ex-wife's parting words, "You've built an empire no one wants to live in." His cleaning staff arrived each evening at precisely 7 p.m. He never saw them, never thought about them. Now he wondered if any had children waiting at bus stops. The teddy bear stared back with its single eye. Richard picked up his phone and made a call not to Tokyo, but to his head of human resources. I need information on our cleaning contractor, specifically a Sarah Chen. Information came quickly when you were Richard Barrett. Sarah had worked through their subcontractor for 3 years. Exemplary record, minimal sick days. Currently assigned to floors 12 through 14, single mother, previously employed as a data analyst before her company downsized. Data analyst, not cleaner. Richard stared out the window toward the neighborhood where Emma had her corner of toys. Cancels. Tokyo, he told his assistant, and find out what happened to Chen Analytical Services 3 years ago. His board would question him. His shareholders would demand explanations. Richard found for the first time in years he didn't care. That evening he left at 6:45 p.m. Stood in the shadows of the lobby, watched as cleaning staff arrived, Sarah among them, head down, shoulders tight with fatigue, name badge clipped to a worn uniform. She'd been walking past him for 3 years, invisible. When had he become the type of man who didn't see people? In his pocket, his fingers found a small glass eye. The finest craftsman in the city had made it that afternoon. For a special project, Richard had explained. The craftsman hadn't questioned why a billionaire needed a teddy bear's eye. Richard waited until Sarah entered the elevator, then followed. Mrs. Chen, she startled, recognition and confusion crossing her face. Mr. Barrett. Is everything all right with Emma, the bear? Everything's fine, he assured her. I wanted to return Max, and I was hoping we could talk. Sarah's supervisor appeared at that moment, face tight with concern. Is there a problem, sir? Richard straightened to his full height, CEO persona sliding back into place. No problem. I'm temporarily reassigning Mrs. Chen to assist me with a special project. The supervisor nodded quickly, no questions asked. In the privacy of his office, Sarah stood uncomfortably, cleaning cart abandoned downstairs. I don't understand, she said. Richard gestured to a chair she hesitated to take. I've been researching Chen Analytical Services. Her face fell. That was a lifetime ago. 3 years, he corrected gently, before Westridge Capital acquired and liquidated it. Westridge Capital, one of Richard's subsidiaries, one of dozens of acquisitions he'd approved without considering the lives affected. Emma's father left when they downsized me, Sarah said quietly. Couldn't handle the step down in lifestyle. Richard's chest tightened. His empire had cost this woman everything, while a child offered him her only comfort. Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning when Richard presented Max, newly repaired with his matching glass eye. "He can see everything now?" she exclaimed, examining her old friend with wonder. They sat in a small cafe near Emma's school. Sarah had been reluctant to accept Richard's invitation, but couldn't deny her daughter's excitement. "Thank you," Sarah said stiffly. Pride and gratitude wrestled in her voice. "That was very kind." Richard waved away her thanks. "It was the least I could do." The waitress brought hot chocolate for Emma, coffee for the adults. Emma's eyes widened at the mountain of whipped cream atop her mug. "Mom, look! It's taller than Max!" Sarah smiled, a genuine expression that momentarily erased the exhaustion from her face. Richard found himself staring, seeing glimpses of Emma in her mother's features. "Mrs. Chen." "Sarah, please." "Sarah, I have a proposition for you." Her guard instantly rose. "Mr. Barrett." "Richard." "Richard, if this is charity, we don't need—" "It's not charity," he interrupted. "It's restitution." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents detailing the dissolution of Chen Analytical Services, his company's role in it, and a job offer. "My data operations division needs leadership, someone who understands both technical requirements and human impact. Your old company's client reviews speak for themselves." Sarah stared at the papers, at the salary figure that would change everything. "Why are you doing this?" Emma was busy showing Max the proper way to drink hot chocolate, oblivious to the adults' conversation. Richard considered his answer carefully. "Because I'm tired of building an empire no one wants to live in." Sarah's eyes showed she understood the weight behind his words. "And if I refuse? Then I'd ask what position you would prefer. Your resume indicates multiple areas of expertise, but I hope you won't refuse." Emma chose that moment to interrupt, chocolate mustache adorning her upper lip. "Mr. Richard, can we go to the park? I want to show Max he doesn't have to be afraid anymore." Sarah started to refuse, polite excuses ready. Richard checked his watch, missed another meeting, another conference call. "I'd like that very much," he said, surprising them both. The park was only 2 blocks away. Emma skipped ahead, having serious conversations with her restored teddy bear. "She's never trusted anyone this quickly," Sarah said quietly. "She's usually so reserved." Richard watched the little girl who had somehow breached his defenses with a simple act of kindness. "Children see what adults miss," he replied. At the park, Emma headed straight for the sandbox, the place Max had lost his eye. "See?" she told her bear. "It's okay now. And look who's protecting you." She pointed to Richard, standing awkwardly in his $1,000 shoes on playground mulch. Sarah laughed, a sound Richard found himself wanting to hear again. "You have no idea what you've signed up for," she warned. For the first time in years, Richard Barrett smiled without calculation or purpose. "I think I'm beginning to." 14 board members stared in disbelief. "You can't." "Be serious," Marcus Weldon, the CFO, finally broke the silence. "A community center? In that neighborhood?" Richard stood at the head of the polished conference table. Behind him, architectural renderings displayed on the massive screen. A building transformed from abandoned warehouse to vibrant community space. "Barrett Foundation's first major project," Richard continued, as if there had been no objection, "offering childcare, job training, and educational resources." "And who exactly is heading this charitable endeavor?" asked Victoria Stein, peering over designer glasses. Richard met her gaze steadily. "Sarah Chen." His announcement sent whispers around the table. Victoria's expression hardened. "The cleaning lady. Former CEO of Chen Analytical and our new director of data operations," Richard corrected, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And yes, also the head of the Foundation's community initiative." 2 months had passed since the rainy day at the bus stop. 2 months of Richard quietly restructuring priorities, making phone calls, pulling strings. 2 months of evening walks in the park with Emma and Sarah, of learning how to see the world through different eyes. "This represents a significant departure from our core business model," Marcus pressed. "Shareholders will have Questions? Let them ask. Richard moved to the window, looking out over the city. We've spent 15 years acquiring wealth at any cost. It's time we considered the impact of that approach. The conference room fell silent again. 15 years of aggressive expansion under Richard's leadership had made them all wealthy, had also made them feared. If anyone would like to register formal objections, now is the time, Richard offered. No one spoke. On the edge of the table sat a small brown teddy bear with two perfect glass eyes. Emma had insisted he take Max to the important meeting. He'll help you be brave, she'd told him seriously. Richard found himself smiling at the memory. Victoria noticed the stuffed toy. And this is my advisor, Richard replied without hesitation. He reminds me that sometimes we need to see things from a different perspective. Later, after the board members had filed out, confused but unwilling to challenge him directly, Richard sat alone in the vast conference room. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. How did it go? He looked at the architectural plans again. At the community center that would bear not his name, but Emma's. Emma's place, the rendering proclaimed, a space where no child would wait alone in the rain. They'll come around, he typed back. Still on for dinner? The reply came quickly. Emma's already setting the table. She says Max saved you a seat. Richard Barrett, who had spent decades building walls between himself and the world, found himself hurrying to leave his tower toward a small apartment where crayon drawings covered the refrigerator, where genuine laughter had become a regular sound. As he gathered his things, his assistant appeared at the door. Sir, the investors from Singapore are on the line. Richard checked his watch. 6 o'clock. In his old life, he would have taken the EHA call, would have worked until midnight. Tell them I'll call tomorrow. I have an important dinner engagement. Some commitments mattered more than others. Cherry Lane curved gently through a neighborhood of modest homes with small, well-kept yards. Not extravagant, not imposing, just right. Emma pressed her face against the car window, eyes wide. Which one is it? Which one? Sarah placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. Patience, sweetheart, Richard smiled from the driver's seat. Not his usual chauffeured luxury car, but a sensible SUV he'd purchased last week. Another change, among many. They pulled into the driveway of a 2-story house with blue shutters and a front porch swing. This one? Emma whispered, suddenly overwhelmed. Richard nodded. Want to see inside? The little girl was out of her seat, belt and tugging at the door handle before he could finish the sentence. The house stood empty, awaiting furniture, awaiting life. Hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon sunlight streaming through uncovered windows. Emma ran from room to room, her excitement echoing off empty walls. Mom, there's a backyard and a tree, a real climbing tree. Sarah moved more slowly, taking in each space with measured steps, touching door frames, testing light switches, fighting tears. It's too much, she said quietly when Emma was out of earshot. We can't accept this. Richard had anticipated her objection. It's not a gift. It's an investment property being rented to a valued employee at a fair market rate. A fair market rate? Sarah raised an eyebrow skeptically. For what? You're bringing to the company? Absolutely. In the 3 months since Sarah had taken her position, the Data Operations Division had undergone a transformation. Efficiency up, costs down, employee satisfaction improved dramatically. She had a gift for seeing both numbers and people, for understanding systems and those who operated them. Richard, she began. I need good people nearby, he continued before she could object further. The community center breaks ground next month. Emma's place needs its namesake within walking distance. At the mention of the center, Sarah's expression softened. The project had become her passion. A way to help families like hers had once been. Emma would have the blue room upstairs, she asked, wavering. Richard nodded. She's already claimed it, currently explaining to Max about the importance of proper furniture arrangement. A small laugh escaped Sarah. That child. Sometimes I wonder what, if she somehow knew. That day in the rain. if she somehow knew exactly what she was doing when she gave you that teddy bear. They stood close now, not touching, but closer than they had been before. Children see what adults miss, Richard repeated his words from months ago. Upstairs, Emma's footsteps pattered excitedly, the sound of life, of possibility. "One condition," Sarah said finally. "Name it. You come for dinner at least twice a week. Emma would miss you otherwise." "Only Emma?" The unspoken question hung between them. "I think that could be arranged," Richard replied, his voice softer than intended. From the top of the stairs, Emma called down, "Mr. Richard, come see. You can see the whole world from my window." Not the whole world, just a neighborhood with children playing, just ordinary lives being lived fully. But to Richard Barrett, who had viewed life from penthouse windows for too long, it might as well have been the entire world opening up before him. "Coming," he called back, offering his hand to Sarah. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. The summer breeze carried children's laughter through open windows. Emma's Place Community Center buzzed with activity, a beacon in a neighborhood once forgotten. Richard sat in his office, reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant interrupted. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." Before Richard could respond, the door pushed open. A man in an expensive but rumpled suit stood in the doorway. "Barrett? Long time?" James Chen, Sarah's ex-husband, Emma's father, Richard, set down his papers carefully, masking the instant tension that gripped his body. "James, this is unexpected." The man strode in, eyes taking in the office. Not the tower downtown, but Richard's new workspace above the community center. Simple, functional. Photos of Emma and Sarah adorning the walls. Quite the transformation. James commented, gesturing vaguely. "The great Richard Barrett? Playing charity worker? What can I do for you?" Richard asked, voice deliberately neutral. James dropped into a chair uninvited. "Heard some interesting news. My ex-wife, my daughter, living in a nice house on Cherry Lane with you." Richard waited, saying nothing. "Also heard about this place. Named after my kid. Emma's Place," Richard confirmed. "It serves over 200 families now." James leaned forward. "Here's what I'm wondering. Why my family? They're not—" "I know. Not mine anymore." James cut him off. "I made mistakes. Bad ones." Outside, a group of children ran past, their shadows momentarily darkening the office. Emma among them, unaware of the visitor upstairs. "What do you want, James?" Richard finally asked. The man stared at his hands, once manicured, now bitten to the quick. "I lost everything after Chen Analytics folded. Job, family, self-respect." "I remember," Richard said quietly. "It was one of my subsidiaries that closed you down." James looked up, surprised at the admission. "I've spent 3 years blaming everyone else," he continued, "but seeing all this—" He gestured to the window, to the community below. "Makes me wonder if I'm the only one who didn't learn from failure." Richard studied the man before him. Once a rival in business, now broken. "Emma asks about you sometimes," Richard offered. Something passed across James's face. Pain, regret. "I've got nothing to offer her. Not like you do. Children don't need offers. They need presents." Downstairs, Emma's voice carried up, calling for Sarah. The sound of family, of belonging. James stood abruptly. "I shouldn't have come." Richard rose too. "Why did you?" The man hesitated at the door. "Closure, maybe? To see if they're happy?" "They are." A nod. Acceptance. "Good. That's good." As James turned to leave, Richard made a decision that surprised even himself. She's having a birthday party. Next month. James froze. "Not as her father," Richard clarified. "That position needs to be earned back, but as someone from her past who wants to be better." The two men regarded each other. Former enemies, potential allies, in caring for the same child. "I'll think about it," James said finally. After he left, Richard stood at the window, watching Emma play below. The little girl who had seen through his wealth to his loneliness, who had offered comfort without judgment. He touched the small teddy bear he kept in his pocket, a reminder of what mattered. Some ghosts needed confronting. Some bridges once burned could be slowly, carefully rebuilt, for Emma's sake, for all their sakes. Autumn painted Cherry Lane in gold and crimson. 6 months since the rainy day at the bus stop. 6 months that had changed everything. Emma's Place Community Center opened with a small ceremony. No press, no fanfare, just families from the neighborhood and a ribbon cutting performed by a beaming 5-year-old girl. "I declare this place open for everybody," Emma announced, her pronunciation of everybody still charmingly imperfect. Applause erupted from the gathered crowd. Sarah stood proudly beside her daughter. Richard watched from a few steps back, content to see rather than be seen. Inside, the center hummed with activity. Childcare spaces filled with toys and books. Computer labs for adults seeking new skills. A kitchen offering cooking classes and community meals. "Mr. Richard," Emma tugged at his hand, "come see the special room." She led him down a hallway to a cozy library lined with bookshelves. In the center, a circle of cushions surrounded a storytelling chair. "This is Max's reading room," Emma explained seriously, "for kids whose parents are busy working, so they're never alone." Richard swallowed hard against the sudden tightness in his throat. On a shelf of honor sat Max himself, both glass eyes gleaming in the warm light. Not Emma's personal teddy bear anymore. She'd insisted he stay here, where he could help more kids. "Do you think he likes it?" Emma asked, genuine concern in her voice. Richard crouched down to her level, something that had become second nature over these months. "I think he loves it, almost as much as he loves you." Emma nodded, satisfied with this assessment. Outside the reading room, Sarah watched their interaction. Something had softened in her since moving to Cherry Lane. The permanent exhaustion had faded from her eyes. "She's attached to you," Sarah said when Richard rejoined her. "We both are." Simple words, enormous meaning. Richard Barrett, once defined by acquisitions and assets, found himself valued for something entirely different. For bedtime stories and Saturday pancakes. For teaching Emma to ride her bike down Cherry Lane. For becoming family. Later. That evening, as autumn wind scattered leaves across the porch of the blue-shuttered house, Richard sat on the swing beside Sarah. Inside, Emma slept peacefully in her blue room. "I have something for you," Sarah said, reaching behind the porch swing cushion. She handed Richard a small box wrapped in child-decorated paper. Inside was a teddy bear, small enough to fit in his palm. New, but with the same kind, slightly lopsided expression as Max. "Emma picked it out," Sarah explained. "She said everyone needs their own bear." Richard held the small toy carefully. "I think she might be right." "She usually is," Sarah agreed. Above them, stars appeared one by one. The neighborhood settled into evening quiet. "Stay," Sarah said softly. Richard looked at her questioningly. "Tonight," she clarified, "and tomorrow, and the day after that." His empire still stood across town. His penthouse remained empty. Board meetings continued, but his home, his real home, had become this porch swing, this woman beside him, a sleeping child who had seen sadness in a stranger and offered her greatest treasure to heal it. "I'd like that," Richard replied, reaching for Sarah's hand. Some journeys begin with a single step, some with a single word. His had begun with a teddy bear offered by a child in the rain. The birthday party buzzed with excitement. Emma's 6th birthday. The blue-shuttered house on Cherry Lane filled with children, parents, neighbors. Laughter spilled from every doorway. Richard stood in the kitchen, cutting cake with mechanical precision. "You okay?" Sarah asked, touching his arm gently. He nodded toward the living room. He came. Through the doorway, James Chen stood awkwardly by the window, present in hand, uncertainty in every line of his body. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. Richard considered the question. The invitation had been his idea, his risk. "She deserves to know where she comes from," he replied. even the complicated parts. Emma hadn't noticed her biological father yet, too busy showing friends her growing collection of teddy bears, each with a name, each with a story. "He looks lost," Sarah observed, not unkindly. "He is," Richard replied, the same way he had been before a child offered him a teddy bear in the rain. Emma spotted James then, froze mid-sentence. The party continued. Around her, but she stood perfectly still. Recognition dawning slowly, Sarah tensed beside Richard, ready to intervene. Richard placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Give her a moment." The little girl approached her father cautiously, not running as she did with most people. Wary steps, measured distance. James crouched down the same way Richard always did when speaking with Emma, the present extended like a peace offering. "Happy birthday, Emma," they heard him say, voice cracking slightly. Emma didn't take the gift immediately. "You left." Simple words, complex hurt. James nodded. "I did. I was wrong." The honesty surprised Richard. No excuses, no deflection. "Are you back now?" Emma asked. James glanced toward Richard and Sarah, then back to his daughter. "I'd like to visit sometimes, if that's okay with you. And your mom. And Richard." Emma considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "Do you want to see my bears?" she finally asked. A test. A small opening. James's relief was palpable. "I'd like that very much." As Emma led her father to her collection, each teddy bear carefully introduced by name, Sarah leaned against Richard's side. "I never thought I'd see that," she admitted. Richard watched the interaction carefully. "People can change." She glanced up at him. "You certainly did." "Because someone saw me, really saw me." Later, after the party wound down and guests departed, the adults sat on the back porch. Awkward silence eventually giving way to careful conversation. "The community center," James said. "It's impressive." "Sarah's vision," Richard replied. "I just provided resources." "And inspiration," Sarah added. James studied his former wife and her new husband. "You built something good here, more than a community center, a family, a home." "Emma wants to know if you'll come to her school play next month," Sarah said. "No pressure, but she's asking." James looked startled, moved. "I'd be honored." As the man prepared to leave, Richard walked him to his car. "Thank you," James said suddenly. "Not just for today, for taking care of them when I couldn't." Richard thought of the man he had been before, successful but empty. "They take care of me too," he replied. The two men, former business rivals now, connected by a child, shook hands, not friends, not yet, but no longer enemies. Inside the house, Emma prepared for bed, arranging her bears in their designated spots. "Did you have a good birthday?" Sarah asked, tucking her daughter in. Emma nodded sleepily. "I had all my favorite people." "Even your dad, James?" The little girl considered this. "He seemed sad, like Mr. Richard was before." Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair. "You see things others don't you?" Emma yawned. "Max taught me how." Outside the bedroom door, Richard listened, chest tight, with emotion. Some bridges took time to build, some took courage to cross, and sometimes the architect was a child with wisdom beyond her years. The plane soared over the Pacific. Emma's face, pressed against the window, watching clouds float beneath them like islands in a vast sky ocean. "How much longer?" she asked for the 12th time since takeoff. Richard checked his watch. "About 5 more hours until we land in Shanghai." Emma nodded seriously, making a calculation with her fingers. "That's 5 more movies." Sarah smiled from across the aisle, travel documents spread before her. Final adoption papers, visa applications, hotel confirmations. 3 weeks, then Lee comes home with us," she said softly, a mixture of excitement and nervousness coloring her words. Home. The blue-shuttered house on Cherry Lane, the room next to Emma's, painted soft green, waiting for its new occupant, Richard. Took Sarah's hand, steady and reassuring. So much had changed in the 18 months since a rainy day encounter had altered the trajectory of all their lives. "What if he doesn't like us?" Sarah voiced her deepest fear. "He'll love you," Richard assured her, "just like I do." Emma, overhearing from her window seat, contributed her own wisdom. He might be scared at first, like Max was when he lost his eye. The original teddy bear had remained at home, holding honorary position in the empty nursery, waiting, like they all were. "But we'll show him he's safe now," Emma continued with absolute certainty. "That's what families do." As the plane began its descent hours later, Richard found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. A little girl's gift had transformed him from loneliness to connection, from isolation to family. Now they traveled halfway, around the world, to extend that same gift to a 3-year-old boy in an orphanage. To bring him home, Shanghai sprawled beneath them, a massive metropolis of lights and movement. "It's bigger than New York," Emma whispered, awestruck. 3 days of official meetings followed. Government buildings, paperwork, hotels where staff treated Richard with the deference his wealth commanded. A world he once navigated exclusively. Now it felt foreign, incomplete. On the 4th morning, they drove 3 hours to a provincial orphanage. Simple building, clean but sparse. Children's drawings brightening otherwise institutional walls. Emma clutched a small backpack containing carefully selected treasures, a welcome package she had assembled herself. In a playroom lined with worn toys, they waited, Sarah gripping Richard's hand so tightly her knuckles whitened. Then the door opened. A caregiver led in a small boy with serious eyes and a cautious expression. Lee, 3 years old, abandoned as an infant, waiting his entire life for this moment he couldn't possibly understand. "Ni hao," Emma said carefully. Having practiced for weeks, the boys studied her, then the adults, saying nothing. Emma, undeterred, opened her backpack. First came a small photo album, pictures of the blue-shuttered house, the green bedroom, the climbing tree in the backyard. Lee looked, still silent, still evaluating. Next came a handmade card with Emma's artwork, a family portrait, Richard, Sarah, Emma, and a small figure labeled Lee. The boy touched the drawing gently, recognition flickering in his eyes. Finally, Emma withdrew her most important gift, a teddy bear, new but modeled after Max, with 2 perfect eyes and a red bow tie. "His name is May," Emma explained, using the Mandarin word for brother that James had taught her. "Every family needs a bear." She held it out, an offering, a bridge. Lee hesitated, looking to his caregiver, who nodded encouragement. Small hands reached out, accepted the gift. Something shifted in the boy's expression. Not quite a smile, but perhaps the beginning of one. Over the next 2 weeks, they visited daily, each time Lee greeted them more warmly. By the end of the first week, he was calling Emma Jia, big sister. By the end of the second, he allowed Richard to carry him on his shoulders around the first orphanage grounds. The day before they were to take him home, Lee finally spoke directly to Sarah in broken English he'd been learning. "You my mother now?" Sarah knelt to his level, as she'd seen Richard do countless times with Emma. "Yes," she said, voice steady despite the tears threatening. "If you want me to be." Lee considered this with the seriousness only children possess, then nodded once. "And house with tree?" Emma had shown him the photos dozens of times now. "Yes," Sarah confirmed, "a house with a tree and your own room, and a family that can't wait to have you home." Lee clutched his teddy bear, never far from his side since Emma's gift, and leaned against Sarah for the first time. Gesture worth more than all the wealth Richard had accumulated in his previous life. Some treasures couldn't be counted in dollars or assets. Some were measured in teddy bears and trust, in family found rather than born into. 1 year later, the rain fell again, not dreary this time, but gentle, nurturing the flowers Emma had planted around the Cherry Lane mailbox. Richard stood at the window, watching droplets pattern the glass. In his hand, the small teddy bear that never left his desk or nightstand. "Penny, for your thoughts," Sarah said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Just remembering," he replied. So much had changed. Barrett Industries had transformed under new priorities. Profit still mattered, but so did people. Employee benefits expanded. Community involvement became corporate policy. Richard's board had adjusted, some more willingly than others. Victoria Stein had surprised everyone by becoming the most vocal advocate for their social responsibility initiatives. "Numbers don't lie," she'd said. "Happier employees, stronger communities, better business." The phone rang. Sarah answered, then held it out to Richard. "It's James. About the foundation position." Another change. James Chen slowly rebuilding his life, working part-time at Emma's place, teaching business skills to adults seeking new careers, finding purpose in helping others start over, the way he himself had started over. Upstairs, Emma helped Lee with his English homework, 7 and 4 now, sister and brother arguing and laughing in equal measure, the boy who had barely spoken during those first weeks in America now chattered constantly. His teddy bear May still accompanied him everywhere, though now somewhat worn from constant companionship. Family. A word that had expanded in meaning for all of them. After the call, Richard joined the children upstairs. "Dad!" Lee exclaimed, throwing himself into Richard's arms with the absolute trust of a child who knew he was loved. Emma looked up from her book. "Is James coming for dinner tonight?" Richard nodded. "And Ms. Lily." James's girlfriend, an art therapist at Emma's place, had become part of their extended circle. Another bridge built, another connection formed. "Can we have ice cream?" Lee negotiated, practical as always. "After dinner," Richard agreed, ruffling the boy's hair. Later, as the house filled with their ever-expanding family, biological, adopted, chosen, Richard found a quiet moment in his home office. On his desk sat the photograph that meant more than any business award, a security camera image, professionally enhanced. A small girl in a rainy bus shelter, offering a teddy bear to a man in an expensive suit, both soaking wet. Both changed forever by what happened next. A soft knock. Emma peered around the door. "Dad?" "Mom says dinner's ready." "Dad." The words still miraculous. "Coming," he promised. Emma noticed the photograph coming to stand beside him. "That's the day we became a family, isn't it?" she asked with a wisdom beyond her years. Richard crouched beside her as he had that first day in the rain. "Yes," he said simply. "That's the day you saved me." Emma shook her head. "That's not how it works." "No?" Richard asked, curious. "We saved." "Each other," she explained patiently. "That's what family does." Lee appeared at the doorway, impatient for dinner to begin, for ice cream to follow. "Come on," he called. "Everyone waiting." Outside, the gentle rain continued, washing everything clean, making way for new growth, for the kind of wealth that couldn't be measured in dollars or acquisitions, for the spaces between people, once vast and empty, now filled with connection. As they joined hands around the dinner table, Sarah, Emma, Lee, James, Lily, and neighbors from Cherry Lane, Richard felt a fullness that his previous life of acquisition had never provided. One small act of kindness. One teddy bear offered without calculation or agenda. It had changed everything, not just for a lonely billionaire, but for a child who saw beyond wealth to the person beneath, for a family formed not by obligation, but by choice, for a community built on the understanding that the most valuable things in life were never things at all, but the bridges we build to each other, one teddy bear at a time. The end.